Action?
Okay, so my talk today is Façade.
Introduce yourself.
Right, my name is Wes Paw. Software engineer, graduate of RIT. I've done Spider-Man 3 at Vicarious Visions and worked on an iOS/Ouya roguelike called 100 Rogues. I'm here today to talk about Façade, a game you probably might not have played, and also kind of revamp my understanding of goals and challenges of advancing storytelling as a medium. So I'm a big fan of storytelling in games, but I dislike a lot of the ways that it's popular currently, and I'm always looking for new and better ways to do it. And I came across the example of Façade about 4 years ago, and just became obsessed with it. I absolutely love the game. It's a technical nightmare and doesn't work at all, but it's just a brilliant design, and more people need to know about it. Façade is a game about interactive storytelling. So to start the talk off, a brief just overview of simple, core, most important storytelling concept of conflict and tension. So generally when you're planning a narrative in a movie, or most of the ways that it's done in games and books and film and television and everything else, it's sort of this top-down approach of we have this plot in mind, and we want the plot to follow this tension curve of starting out low and then reaching a plateau and leveling out for a bit, and slowly climbing until you reach a climax, and then the story's over and you come down off of your tension as things get resolved. So that's the top-down approach of we plan this high-level conflict, and that's the focus of our story, and then we build scenes that move towards that conflict, and then we drill down into the scenes and figure out how the dialogue needs to work. And maybe you have some clever ideas about, a character will drop a bit of exposition in the first scene that'll be super important later on, but for the most part it's that high level first, and then drill down and focus low level. And the important thing about this is that it is very finely grained authorship of every part. Every line of dialogue is significant. Every word that a character chooses is massively important to character development that will influence this conflict as it goes on. So the important part is specific control and authorship of every possible aspect from start to finish. Is how narrative works in most film and in games that use sort of linear storytelling techniques. So a quick example of that, Sixth Sense. This is a movie that was built entirely around one plot twist, and every scene, every way that a camera was set up, every line of dialogue somehow supported that one twist ending. And that's all that the movie was about, and it's an example of how very fragile this sort of system is, because if a certain character arrived at the wrong moment, or somebody didn't say something, or somebody noticed something, the twist would have been ruined, and the film would have been over before it even really got going. So I wanted to take a moment to use that as an example of just how frail and fragile the system is, because it goes back to why these stories have to be so specifically authored. Right, so that's the approach used in games and everything else, and it has nothing to do with games. It has nothing to do with rule systems or interaction or any of the things that we really love about games. To compare this with how we actually do design games, we can look at how we design combat, which almost sort of seems like a top-down system at first, in the sense that we start with a general concept for a character class, like a stealthy assassin or something like that. But almost immediately we start looking at what are the very low-level details of how an ability is going to work, how a sword attack will work, how long you want your DOTs to work, or to go on, all of that sort of minutia in planning each individual ability. And then you plan out 10 abilities, you do a ton of playtesting, and start to notice strategies emerging from it. So you start at this low level and build to the higher level, and sort of influence things and let a game be created organically from these smaller components, and balance and manage things as the layers of abstraction go higher and higher. So that's the complete opposite approach of how we build stories usually. So if we want to do story-driven gameplay, we need to look at approaching stories from the same mentality and breaking down into these very low-level concepts first, and letting them build into stories more organically. So what is a class in a story-driven game? A class would be a human being archetype. So a person, here we have a screenshot from Façade, which I promise I'm getting to, with the two main characters, Trip on the left and Grace on the right. And each one of them is a unique NPC class in this game. And, you know, a class in an RPG is a theme with abilities, with traits and attributes. In a story-driven game, they have a history, they have an emotional past, they have relationships with other people that have their own histories that have built over years and years and years. And all of these things influence how an agent will behave and how they'll react to certain stimuli and how they'll interact with one another in the context of a conversation. So each action they make is sort of a skill in a real world sense. Walking to the other side of a room is a skill instead of swinging a sword. Speaking in an angry voice is a skill that we have. And, you know, Trip might be an angrier person, Grace might be a more passive-aggressive person, and they'll have different skill sets. So that's those are the sort of ideas to keep in mind when building a game like Façade, that you need to work from that very low level. And when you sort of start to organize things, there's three main categories of a personality that need to be defined in your software architecture to make this happen. And that's knowledge representation, both of real-world facts and memories of your personal history. You don't need so much with the knowledge depending on what game you're doing. You'll need like your phone number and your address probably, and where you went to school and that kind of detail like that, but you don't necessarily need the history of Bolivia or something like that. More important is memories. Having a good knowledge representation for memories is critical, not only of long-term things like someone that broke your heart when you were 20, but also things like he didn't say bless you when I sneezed 15 minutes ago in this conversation. And Façade does a really great job, well, tries to do a really great job at remembering those kinds of little things as a conversation goes along. You need emotions, which can be as simple as just I have 10 points of rage right now and 30 points of annoyance, so I'm acting slightly more annoyed. At a simple level, that's sort of how that is a valid way to represent emotions. Obviously, the more complicated part is figuring out how to actuate actors based on those emotional levels. But yeah, it's perfectly fine, and Façade does this to some degree to just represent emotions as numbers. And then finally, of course, actors need goals and motivations. They need to be constantly deciding how to use their knowledge and their knowledge and motives to suppress their emotions and control their emotions to accomplish something, be it to get some information out of somebody, or to make a friend, to seduce someone. There's all sorts of social goals and motivations that we might have. And if you want to see it in action, just go to a bar on a Friday night. So that is how Façade represents characters. It's again this very low-level, bottom-up approach of just defining a person's internal state and then saying go and putting them into a system. And they use natural language processing to actually give a voice to their emotions and to actuate their goals, to communicate with other actors in the system, who in turn have their own mental map of how they're going to interpret information, build it into their emotional state, interpret it using memories and emotions, and manipulate it to achieve their own motives. So that is how the game design of story works, is treating everything like I have a goal, I am a human being with emotions and chemical processes going on, and I'm going to interact with other people in a way that will get me closer to my goals. So the hope is that by doing this and just creating this sandbox with really well-crafted, interesting characters and saying go, that they'll get into arguments and they'll scheme against one another and they'll backstab and they'll fall in love or out of love and hate each other, and at the end of it all, somehow you get an interesting story. Obviously, this is a little hit or miss because of how complex these interactions really are. So of course, sometimes you just need to cheat. And I'm not 100% sure to what degree Façade does this, but I'm pretty sure it's pretty ham-fisted as far as it goes, and that's fine. I mean, what I'm talking about cheating here is like the AI director in Left 4 Dead. There are certain rules that are going on, certain things that would happen naturally, but you might also need a guiding hand above it to sort of influence one character's emotions, and to have a phone ring at an inopportune moment. Façade does that actually pretty cleverly, just to get action moving in directions that might not be anticipated. So yeah, with the phone example, getting a call from a parent from Grace's parent that Tripp really hates, spurns conflict where it might not have existed otherwise. So this is legitimate. It's not cheating necessarily, although it really feels like it. There's a really great example from film, if any of you have seen Cabin in the Woods. There's this one moment where, it's a horror movie, and there's this group of kids in a cabin in the woods, and they're wandering through this house, and one of them says, "Let's stay together, guys, let's protect each other, we'll be safe." And the people controlling this environment emit some sort of magical neural gas that the characters breathe in, and suddenly they say, "No, actually, let's split up, that's a much better idea." So it's, Cabin in the Woods is a really great example of all of this stuff going on in Façade, as far as manipulating emotions and neural processes to create a story. So the massive caveat to all of this is it's friggin' insane technology. Like, this is the end game of artificial intelligence, is actually creating humans that pass the Turing test and you can hold a conversation with and have it be believable. And this game is 10, 11 years old right now, and it definitely shows it. It was also a pet project by two professors at University of Santa Cruz. So it definitely shows how low fidelity the art is, and how buggy it is, and how much it misses the mark. But to date, it is the only game I know of that actually takes this low-level approach and commits to it 100%. Because of that, that's really my motivation for liking it, for wanting to constantly talk about it, to get people excited about this idea. That even though it is this endgame thing, it's a problem we can start working on now, start making actual steps towards solving these issues, and at least making something more or less functional with it right now. So I have the game downloaded on this computer. Had to sift through some adware to get to it, but I also have a trailer for it, which I'll play now, which is 5 minutes, which might be a good time to cut the video if you're...
Yeah, we have 7 minutes left.
Okay, cool.
Hey there, it's Tripp. It's, wow, it's been a while since we all, but, why don't you come over tonight? Grace and I, we'd love to see you. So yeah, just, come on over, around 8. It'll be fun. Can't wait to see you. Andrew! I'm so happy you could make it. We haven't seen you in so long. How's it going, man? Oh, we're great. I mean, really, really great. Come on in!
Andrew? Hi, how are you? Oh, it's so nice to see you. It feels like it's been forever.
Yeah, how are you doing?
I just asked him that.
Well, I can ask him too.
Oh. And I've got to say, you look really good.
Well, it's funny how after a full day's work designing magazine ads, Grace finds the time to decorate and redecorate.
I guess it's just the artist in me dying to get out. You know that flirting with me is only going to make me wish I'd married you instead of Trip.
Okay, that's enough, you two lovebirds. Okay, Andrew, I think this evening is over. You've got to leave. There's only so much you can expect to put up with, you know?
This explains why I constantly
Andrew,
lose.
I just realized.
Oh.
I'm sorry.
What?
I haven't gotten us drinks. When it comes to drinking, I have the simplest tastes. I'm always satisfied with the best. So, what's your poison? Can I interest you in a single malt scotch? It's primo. I served them at our last party. They were a smash. Martinis. Perfect. Classic. Great idea.
Well, it didn't take long for you two to bond or whatever. Trip thinks he's at his classiest when he's on the serving end of a swizzle stick.
Why don't I make us one of my new drink inventions? I call it Grace's Inner Soul. It's a mixture of Chardonnay, bitters, and lots of ice. Now, Andrew, in one word, what does this picture say to you?
Say to you, yes, good question, good question.
Grace stayed behind in the hotel room when I was out taking this picture, so... Well, actually, this trip to Italy was meant to be our second honeymoon.
Oh, was that what it was? Huh. I'm always the last to know.
Grace, I wanted us to spend some time together. So, in a word, this says... romance. No, it says romance.
Romance? Huh. In our marriage, that's just a code word for manipulation.
Grace, it'd been such a long time since we had a chance to...
You planned that trip without even asking me if I wanted to go.
Okay, I'm really sorry I dragged you off to Italy, Grace.
Oh.
My God, what is going on with you two tonight?
Trip? I
Oh,
don't...
no, don't let me get in the way. I'll leave you two to continue.
What? Where are you
Don't
going?
mind me, I'll just be in the kitchen.
You know, you don't have to tell me that things aren't perfect. I mean, you can't tell me that every marriage is perfect.
Oh my gosh.
You maniac, you sex maniac. Never afraid to push our little buttons.
Andrew, it's time that Trip finally
Grace,
just admits
no,
that our marriage...
no, you don't need to.
admits that our marriage
Stop
is not...
Stop it.
Do you really want the honest truth, huh?
You're saying I caused all this? What, screwed up somewhere along the line?
In college, I was in love with someone else.
What? Grace? I've been having an affair.
I jinxed our marriage, Trip. I jinxed it. I'm sorry. You manipulated me. And I never did anything about it. And here we are.
Marriage is a wonderful institution. But who wants to live in an institution? Yeah, I'm just kidding.
Okay. So, the first question I have looking at something like this is how much is smoke and mirrors, and I'm not sure. I'm sure that to some degree some of this is canned, but that's sort of the ideal that they're going for, is having all of that be programmatically organic and to still create conflict and have a decent resolution to it, which is the main idea of the game and what I'm really passionate about seeing more of. So I guess I'll end the talk there and save the minute or whatever we have for questions. And
This sounds like it needs a this needs a Skyrim mod.
oh, that'd be so good.
Any other questions?
I have one. Am I to assume that this is only one possible storyline generated from the game, or is this the the main plot line and how you interact with it is what's the variable?
So the game takes place over like 20 minutes.
Uh-huh.
There's not really a story to it. marital problems. And
Right.
that's the only story that exists. You're not guaranteed to see any dialogue twice or anything else. All of it changes based on your body language, where you stand in the apartment, what you say, what physical contact you make with Trip and Grace. You can hug them or kiss them or hold a drink or put a drink down, and all of that stuff plays
Okay.
into how they respond. And there's a bit of randomization to it as well.
Okay.
Do you have a goal that you know about, or?
It's a little hard to say. The hardest thing to do in the game is to save their relationship, which is
Okay.
possible, so that kind of makes it seem like a goal.
Mm-hmm.
I've heard a lot of people say, this isn't even a game, because there's no winning and losing. So,
Sims.
yeah.
It's kind of like Papers, Please in a lot of regards, as to you can choose what happens, but any end sort of moot. It doesn't really matter.
Yeah. I think it's not really in the spirit of the game to say that it needs to have a winning condition or a goal or anything like that. But if you're diehard on saying games need win-lose screens, you can put you win if you save their relationship and they don't kick you out. But yeah, there's no real goal per se, I wouldn't say.
Great job, Wes.
Oh,
One more. Sorry.
What is the strangest outcome you've gotten from this game without getting kicked out?
I'm not sure I've had any really strange outcomes myself personally.
Well, what's the strangest one you've seen?
The strangest one I've seen is the one, I don't know if any of you wondered about this slide, why Genghis Khan is down here. There's a YouTube video I can show of somebody role-playing as Genghis Khan coming and having dinner with Trip and Grace. So that one was definitely the weirdest thing that I've seen. But I'd say the legitimately most interesting thing that I've seen is somebody that just didn't talk throughout the entire night except to occasionally ask a poignant why that saved their marriage. So yeah, there's tons of YouTube videos about this game of people just doing wacky stuff with it. And usually people are more creative than I can be, so I would direct you to those. But I like those two in particular, especially Genghis Khan.
Is the architecture of the game open, or is it closed? Like, how does...
I believe it is open.
Okay.
I'm not 100%
So I
sure.
was trying to figure out how the hell you get Genghis Khan in there unless it was already something that was supported.
Well, I mean, it's just typing, so you can do whatever you want, and then the person did a voiceover themselves of saying what he typed. I am a warlord.
Okay. Alright.
Typed
I thought like literally like just
no.
randomly there's this other character that's Genghis Khan, and I was thinking to myself like, well then the natural language processing is a lot harder.
Yeah, nothing like that. They give you a bunch of names that you could choose from. Andrew was one of them that they used in the video, and another one is just Ka, K-H-A, which isn't a name. So I assume somebody thought, what possible name could we come up with? Genghis Khan. All right.
Okay, alright. That's fair.
Any other questions?
So, the dialogue, I mean, it seems like it's not like the program's choosing every single word. It seems like there are definite sentences that have been voice acted.
Yes. One interesting thing is that actors can interrupt each other, so they might only get halfway through a sentence, but I'm pretty sure that the way the VO works is that there are full sentences that
They have to be really angry to start interrupting people, I take it, from
Yeah, I
that
think
video.
so. Yeah, and you can interrupt them. They don't always get interrupted, but you can cut somebody off before they finish a sentence if you're quick on typing.
Well, thank you so much, Wes.
Sure thing, my pleasure.